All right, let's get right into it. Something pretty huge is happening in Morocco's strawberry industry. But this isn't just a story about growing more fruit. Not at all. It's about a complete shift in thinking, a pivot away from producing massive volumes to something way smarter: premium agility.
So think about this for a second. What if the most important thing about a strawberry isn't its sweetness, but its timing? Because that question right there is at the absolute heart of this story. The entire rulebook for global produce is being torn up, and winning is no longer about having the most, it's about having it at the perfect moment.
See, it used to be pretty simple. The country that grew the most strawberries won. But that era, it's over, done. Now it's a way more complex game. It's all about timing, logistics, and strategy. Being in the right place at exactly the right time, well, that's everything now.
Which really is what this new era for berries is all about. You know, the old playbook, just grow as much as you can, flood the market, hope for the best? Yeah, that's done. That game is officially over.
And this image, well, it just shows you the two different worlds perfectly. On the left, you've got the old era. You're out in the open, completely at the mercy of the weather, just trying to pump out volume. But look to the right, that's the new era. We're talking high-tech, controlled environments where you can engineer a consistent supply. It's a fundamental move from just reacting to nature to actually controlling your own destiny.
So, with those new rules in mind, let's zoom in on Morocco. The country's entire strawberry industry found itself caught in a perfect storm. We're talking bad weather on one side and fierce competition on the other. It forced them to make a really dramatic choice. The real tipping point came during the 2026 campaign. In Morocco's traditional growing regions in the north, the weather just fell apart. We're talking continuous rain, not nearly enough sun, and it absolutely hammered the crop. It affected the size of the berries, the total yield, the whole thing. This was the climate shock that served as a massive wake-up call.
And the first major hit, it came from the climate. A shocking 33% drop in net yield in their traditional northern growing regions. Now, this wasn't just a bad harvest. This was a systemic shock to the entire system.
And here's the reason why. Back in 2026, a climatological shock brought relentless rain and very little sun. It totally devastated the crop, but more importantly, it laid bare the fatal flaw of the old model. Farming out in the open had become a risk that no one was willing to insure. It was just too unpredictable.
The second pressure is all about the money. Growers are getting hit with what you could call a logistics tax. Costs are exploding from every direction: fuel, packaging, shipping, and these aren't small jumps. We're talking huge increases. And all of that is crushing their profit margins because the price you and I pay at the store isn't going up nearly as fast.
At the exact same time, Morocco is getting squeezed by its regional rival, Egypt, who is just dominating the market on sheer volume. So this forces Morocco into a corner. They have to justify a price that's 10 to 15% higher. They can't win on quantity, so they have to win on quality and reliability. But that bad weather was destroying their biggest advantage.
And finally, you've got the competition. Just look at Egypt. Egypt is all in on the volume game, just flooding the market with as many strawberries as possible. And Morocco looked at that and made a really smart call. They realized they can't win that war, so they're not even going to fight it. They are intentionally stepping out of the volume race to play a completely different, much smarter game.
So you've got this three-front war: climate, costs, and competition. What's the answer? It's bold, and it's geographic. It's a massive, carefully planned migration of the entire industry. But don't think of it as a retreat. Think of it as a strategic move to higher, more defensible ground.
I mean, that sounds kind of impossible, right? You can't escape the weather, it's everywhere. How can an entire agricultural industry just pack up its bags and leave to get away from the climate? And here's the answer. It's not about running away. Think of it as a strategic, geographic shift in gravity. They aren't just moving randomly, they are repositioning the entire industry to parts of the country where the climate is much more stable and, crucially, predictable.
This map just lays it all out. You can see the industry's heartland shifting away from that unpredictable north and moving down to these new strategic hubs in Agadir and Dakhla. And why there? Simple. The south offers what the north can't anymore: a stable climate and predictable sunshine. Exactly what you need for modern, tech-heavy farming.
And just to give you a sense of scale, this isn't some small experiment. We're talking 56%. More than half of Morocco's entire national strawberry production is already concentrated in these two southern hubs.
This is a total re-engineering of their agricultural map.
You know, Morocco isn't alone in this. Take a look at Italy. They're doing almost the exact same thing, moving south for the very same reasons: climate adaptation. So Morocco's big move is actually part of a much larger trend across the Mediterranean. It's about survival in a world that's changing really, really fast.
It's basically becoming the new playbook for agricultural survival in the 21st century.
Okay, so moving an entire industry is one thing, but making it profitable, that's another challenge altogether. So let's break down the actual playbook, the 3 critical rules that Morocco is following to make this whole premium agility thing actually work.
Some economists are starting to call it the logistics tax, and it's this idea that all the costs to actually grow and ship produce are skyrocketing, but the prices you and I see on the supermarket shelves, they're staying pretty flat. So who has to absorb that cost? The grower. Their profit margin just gets smaller and smaller. And we're not talking about small increases here. We're talking a 30% jump in fuel costs, a massive 50% surge in what they pay for packaging, not to mention these wild spikes in freight costs because of geopolitical conflicts. Every single thing they need to buy is getting more expensive. So from the second a berry is picked, to the truck it's loaded on, to that little plastic container it sits in on the shelf, costs are just piling up at every single step. It's this relentless squeeze on profitability, and it's happening to producers all over the world. So you're facing climate chaos and a cost crisis. What's the path forward? Well, the report this is based on lays out 3 really clear, actionable strategies that Morocco has to embrace if it wants to secure its future. This quote really just nails it. You can't win by just buying more land and planting more crops anymore. That game is over. It's about being smarter, it's about being faster, and it's about being way more reliable. So if we had to boil this entire really complex story down to just one single essential takeaway for the future of global farming, what would it be? This right here is it. In this new era, the power doesn't lie with the biggest producer anymore. It lies with the producer who can deliver a perfect product at the exact moment the market is desperate for it. If you can control the timing, you control the profit. Simple as that. Okay, first, target those market windows, not just the total yield. This means using newer varieties of strawberries that produce fruit continuously, so they can fill market gaps whenever and wherever they pop up. Second, they have to defend their profit margin. They can do this with things like ironclad traceability to prove their quality is worth a higher price. And third, they have to finish the job, complete that migration south to lock in that climate stability for good.
All right, imperative number 1. Forget just chasing yield, you have to target specific market windows. This graph shows it all. See that spiky red line? That's the old way, boom and bust, with huge gaps in supply. The new strategy uses special everbearing plants to create that flat green line. That means a continuous, predictable supply that lets them sell strawberries when nobody else can.
Rule number 2. You have to protect your profit margin. If you're not going to compete on volume, you absolutely have to compete on value, especially when your costs, like a 50% jump in packaging, are going through the roof. The only way to win is to justify charging a premium for your product.
So how do you do that? How do you justify being more expensive? Well, here's the formula. It's about giving your customers, the big retailers, something they can count on: total data traceability, from farm to shelf. Plus that guaranteed high quality that you can only get from tech-controlled greenhouses. That combination is what earns you that higher price tag.
And the third imperative is that you can't just look at your own backyard. While finishing that big move south secures your domestic supply, you've also got to keep an eye on the bigger picture, on geopolitical risks. As you can see here, that means watching for new competitors. South Africa, for instance, is starting to eye the same lucrative markets in the Gulf. To stay ahead, you have to be playing chess on a global board.
So when you put all of these pieces together, the climate adaptation, the economic strategy, the tech, you end up with a brand new formula for winning. And in this new formula, timing truly is the new margin. And this chart just illustrates that new operating model perfectly. It's not about one single thing. It's about how 3 pillars work together. You've got agronomy, which is about creating those continuous supply windows. You've got economics, which is about defending your premium price. And you've got geography to protect yourself from risk. All 3 have to work in harmony to achieve the new ultimate prize, margin dominance.
Which really brings us back to the main takeaway. In the new era of global produce, market share is no longer won through acreage. Controlling the timing is controlling the margin. Ultimately, Morocco's story isn't just about strawberries. It's a potential blueprint for how to build a resilient food system in a very, very volatile world. And the real question is, who's going to be next to follow their lead?
Welcome to the debate. So, looking back at 2026, Morocco's northern strawberry fields lost a staggering 33% of their yield.
Yeah, and it was almost overnight, really. Just continuous punishing rainfall and, low solar radiation.
Exactly. And for decades, global agriculture was basically just a sheer numbers game. You plant more acreage, you harvest more tonnage. But today, we're asking if that era of volume is, well, dead.
Because we are looking at a huge structural transformation in the Moroccan strawberry industry. It's what the Strategic Market Report calls this shift toward a premium agility.
Right.
And the central question we need to evaluate is whether slashing overall production to chase specific market windows is a masterful adaptation to climate realities, or just a pretty precarious retreat, one that surrenders vital market share.
And I'll be defending this pivot. I mean, a southern migration and utilizing strategic timing is really the only sustainable blueprint for this new era of global produce.
Well, I take the opposing view. Conceding the volume war masks some really dangerous vulnerabilities, exposing Morocco to regional competitors and incredibly rigid retail price ceilings.
Let's look at why this massive shift away from the north is an absolute necessity, though. I mean, open field farming up there has essentially become an uninsurable risk.
But the sheer scale of the contraction is just...
It is huge, yes. But by focusing on a southern migration to Agadir and Dakhla, which now make up 56% of national production, Morocco is actually securing climate resilience.
By shrinking the industry from 3,700 hectares down to 2,300, you are intentionally abandoning vast swaths of production capability?
Well, they're deploying everbearing strawberry varieties now, so instead of just planting seeds and hoping for a massive seasonal burst, they can actually manufacture a precise harvest schedule.
Right, to hit those specific market windows.
Exactly. They hit highly lucrative windows right when competitors have absolutely nothing to sell.
Okay, but you are conceding sheer volume dominance to competitors like Egypt.
Morocco is betting its entire industry on maintaining a fragile, 10 to 15% price premium.
Shrinking acreage isn't a retreat if you're abandoning unprofitable land, though. Competing on raw volume today is like investing in penny stocks.
How so?
It's high volume, but massive uncontrollable risk. Morocco is pivoting to blue-chip dividends, so lower volume but absolute reliability and guaranteed premium returns. Well, blue-chip dividends assume your product actually reaches the shelf cheaply, and the industry is getting crushed by a severe logistics tax right now. Cost inflation is everywhere.
The supply chain breaks are hitting everyone, sure.
Yeah, but we're seeing a 50% spike in packaging costs and a 30% surge in fuel. UK importers are currently absorbing these initial shocks just to stabilize retail prices. But they won't do that forever. How does a 15% premium positioning survive that?
It survives because your product solves their biggest headache, which is unpredictability. Yes, fuel is up 30%, but transport is only a fraction of the final retail price.
It's still a significant cost.
It is, but the real margin killer for a UK retailer is in-store spoilage. Empty shelves. By implementing tech-enabled data traceability, Moroccan growers offer absolute supply reliability. Retailers happily pay that premium because the trackable delivery slashes their waste.
Which effectively offsets the inflated shipping costs.
Exactly.
That works on paper, I'll give you that, but it assumes those supply lines remain unbroken. Moving south to Agadir and Dakhla definitely solves the immediate climate problem, but it creates a massive logistical and geopolitical blind spot.
Because of the distance.
Yes, you are now heavily reliant on longer maritime routes to get this premium product to lucrative Gulf markets. And South Africa is rapidly emerging as a formidable competitor here.
They are expanding, yes.
Positioned to undercut Morocco's tightly wound premium strategy.
I hear that. But stabilizing the internal supply against climate shocks is the absolute prerequisite for survival. I mean, you cannot fight a trade war if your crops are drowning in the north.
Sure.
This southern migration perfectly mirrors Italy's shift southward to Campania. Elite global producers are realizing that moving to hotter, drier zones lets them completely control water input. You strip away the unpredictability of northern rain.
Controlling the water input is a huge advantage, I grant you that. But a premium strategy remains a high-wire act. When structural inflation continuously squeezes margins, shrinking your footprint leaves absolutely no margin for error.
But transitioning from a volume-dependent model to precision-timed production is what guarantees long-term viability in a volatile world. This tension between sheer yield and market timing is a major paradigm shift in global agriculture.
It is, and there is certainly plenty more to explore in the source data. It really leaves us to weigh whether controlling the timing truly means controlling the margin.
Which brings us right back to our original image of those sprawling fields. The future of farming isn't about how much land you can plant, but exactly when you can harvest.